Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you in the sixth edition of Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. Today it is a very special edition for us because we have French Alliance Ahmedabad joining us in this particular session where we are joined by very respected, acclaimed, experienced vice Mr. Dorian from Paris and of course Janvi Sanaiya of Wives of India from Ahmedabad. They will be talking about studies and careers in journalism, besides many other things happening in the world of journalism. I'm also joined by the director of Ahmedabad Alliance, French Alliance, Mr. Gael de Kerganik, and culture coordinator, Mr. Amol Dave. This broadcast is available on Ahmedabad International Literature Festival Facebook page and the Facebook page of French Alliance Ahmedabad as well, Ahmedabad International Literature Festival YouTube channel, as well as Twitter handle. This I would request all the audience to share it on their social media pages to friends and relatives so that everybody can take advantage of the thing, journalism, which is one of the most important thing in today's world. This is the sixth edition, which we are running as of now of Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. We started in February this year. We'll be showing you a small video, what has been happening in Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. After that, we'll go ahead with the session. Here is the video.
Ahmedabad International Literature Festival, which aims to promote reading and writing, particularly in children and young adults, started with a bang in 2016. Mr. Umashankar Yadav, the founder-director of AILF and Icon Education Foundation, with his able and committed team, has taken the literary discourse of the city to a new height with 3 successful annual editions of the Literature Festival.
इस तरह के लिटरेचर फेस्टिवल के माध्यम से उसी इक्वल प्लेटफॉर्म और उतना ही ऑनर मिलना चाहिए, वो उन्नत समाज की निशानी होती है और ये बहुत पॉजिटिव साइन है.
આ પ્રક્રિયા છે તે જળ બિંદુમાંથી મોટી થવાની પ્રક્રિયા છે.
AILF जैसे पहल रखी गई है, ये बहुत जरूरी है.
AILF has gained widespread appreciation and popularity and has been applauded for its continuous and commendable work. Every time AILF proudly presents a collective diverse of distinguished speakers from the fields of literature, art, cinema, journalism, business, politics, academics and more, who share their insightful opinions and compelling takes on a variety of subjects.
અહીંના નાગરિકોને આર્ટ, કલ્ચર, લિટરેચર આ તમામ બાબતોમાં પણ એક મંચ મળી રહે અને કલા અને સંસ્કૃતિને પણ પ્રોત્સાહન મળે.
સંસ્કૃતિ આપણી કલા એ આજની નવી પેઢી સુધી પણ પહોંચે અને એ લોકો પણ આપણી આ જે સંસ્કૃતિ છે એને ગરિમાને જાળવી રાખે તેના પ્રયાસ રૂપે અમે આ ફેસ્ટિવલનું આયોજન કર્યું.
A host of other activities like book launches, authors' interactions with attendees, workshops, art and craft displays are also a huge draw for people. Various contests and awards make the festival even more fascinating and lively. Cultural events of the AILF with musical evenings and engaging literary discussions are promoting literary tourism to Ahmedabad, making the city an important literature destination in the country. Ahmedabad International Literature Festival resolves to continue serving literature lovers the best of everything that the world has to offer.
इनका वर्णन मिलता है. हमारा संपूर्ण साहित्य, उसका मतलब ही ये है जो समाज का कल्याण करे, हित करे, परोपकार करे, भलाई करे, वो साहित्य है. जिस साहित्य में ये वर्णन नहीं तो वो साहित्य नहीं, एक कल्पना मात्र हो सकती है.
Welcome back, all of you, once again. Now, I would request Director of Ahmedabad, French Alliance Ahmedabad, Mr. Gael, to welcome and introduce Mr. Dorian, who is joining us from Paris. Mr. Gael, please.
Thank you, Mashankar. Thank you, Mashankar. It's always a pleasure for now almost 6 years that Alliance Française Ahmedabad is a partner with Ahmedabad International Literature Festival. Today, we have also the partnership of Campus France, the Embassy of France, for broadcasting these two students all over India. I'm very, very honored to introduce us for free session Dorian Malovic, free session that will be Saturday, the same time, 6:30 p.m. Indian time. Dorian Malovic, who is a very famous journalist in France, he is the director of the Asia service of the daily newspaper La Croix, which is one of the top newspapers in France. Dorian is the director of this service since 1997, and he is also a French writer with almost 10 books on Asia, and he is a specialist of many countries of Eastern Asia, Southeast Asia, and also Australia, New Zealand. Dorian Malovic has been, in the early 90s, a correspondent for many newspapers in Hong Kong for 4 years, and he had the chance to be one of the first journalists to travel all over India just after the opening of India. So
China.
He has
China.
Sorry, we are in India, but of China.
It will come later.
Thank you, Dorian. Yes, you will come as soon as possible. So for those 40 years, he has contributed with his many books to the knowledge of Eastern Asia, and recently he's one of the most important specialists in France of North Korea. So he has been contributing to share with French his knowledge of the situation in Asia. Today, we welcome him here for general introduction about what is the career of a journalist. Not only the career, but how you become a journalist with his own experience. And we have a wonderful moderator, Janvi Sanaiya, of Vibes of India, that she will be introduced after by Amol Dave. So thank you, Dorian, for being here with us from France, from Paris.
Pleasure.
And now I let Amol Dave, the culture coordinator of Alliance Française d'Ahmedabad, give us a word and introduction of Janvi. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Gael, for a very comprehensive introduction. Yeah, Mr. Amol, now you can introduce Janvi, please.
Yes, hello everyone. Welcome to this beautiful conference with Dorian Malovic. So introducing Janvi Sanaiya. She's an editor with Vibes of India, a digital media platform in Hindi, English, and Gujarati. She has worked with the Times of India Group, the DNA newspaper, Divya Bhaskar, and other publications. She covers, her departments include income tax, GST, defense, energy, and petrochemicals. So a very warm welcome to you, Janvi. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you, Amol, for introducing Janvi. Now we are into a real discussion. Janvi, this session is over to you. Now we are looking forward for a very engaging discussion, please. Yes. You are mute, Janvi.
Yeah. So, Dorian, before you start with your presentation, where you will be explaining about your whole journey, if you can just share about your journey in brief with all the people who are watching us right now.
Okay. Thank you, all of you, for the invitation to be part of this conference and sharing. I'm very honored to be to share this in India. That's the first for me. I've been to India twice, but of course, just to tell you the truth, I went to India to meet the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala. So that was my only experience in India. So the connection today is very important. And thanks to Alliance Française, Mr. Gaël, okay, French Institute and Campus France. I'm very happy to meet you all today. And I try to present a little bit. For me, the presentation is about, for me, what is journalism? What is this great job? And I should start personally to say, for me, that's the greatest job on earth. Definitely. Even though when I was very young, I wanted to be a doctor, right? I wanted to be a doctor. I really, really wanted to be a doctor, but I was too lazy. And then, okay, I had to switch to something else, even though to be a doctor and a journalist, after the years, I can see some parallel between a doctor and a journalist, because as a journalist, we have to meet thousands of people everywhere and we listen to the people. And that means for many people, when you listen to them, it's like you are a doctor of the soul, because the people share their intimacy and they share to you many things they cannot share with other people, with their friends or their family. So I think that's very interesting. That's why I'm so curious and interested in meeting people, listening to them, and then, of course, sharing what I learned to the readers or listeners or viewers. So for me, that's really my life and my work are totally linked. I mean, I live through the open eyes. I would say that, okay, we say the title is Career and Studies, but I think, of course, to be a journalist is not like, okay, you go to a special school, you have a diploma, and then you are a journalist. No, that doesn't work like this. It's necessary, of course, to study, to read, to have a general culture, a culture on a lot of things. That's very important. But I think basically, one word is important, is your own personality. Your own personality is really what you can do, what you can share, and the way you work. It's the difference. You have many journalists, you have different personalities. And I think the richness of all those personalities make it that everybody can express the way they feel, the way they are. And that's about the freedom, right? You have the freedom to express and to give the news the way you feel it's the best for the readers and the audience, never forgetting that you are not working for your colleague journalists, but you work for the readers. You work for the readers, the listeners, the viewers. You know, you don't work for you. You just work, gather everything inside, you digest them, and then you're able, when you have the feeling you master the thing, you can write and share. That would be my basic. I mean, you have to be curious. You have to have open eyes, open-minded. You have to discover everything every day. And that's why I love this job so much. That means that every day I learned something new. And that very rare work where every day you learn something new. So for me, that's the ultimate satisfaction, is that, okay, late at night, I say, okay, I learned so much today. Okay, that would be for the general introduction. But to be honest, I was not a very good student at school. I was a bit lazy, but I love to talk a lot, and I started to learn foreign languages. I mean, I am a mixed blood from France and Bosnia, Croatia, Serbia, from the ex-Yugoslavia. I listened to the language of my parents. They never taught it to me, but I was curious and wanted to understand what they were talking about. So I learned it by myself, and I was very, very interested in foreign languages. That was the start of everything. I studied different languages, like, English, Spanish, German, and then later I started to learn other languages. But I think the open mind, I mean, when you learn a language, you learn a culture. And then that's why I love Alliance Française so much. I met a lot of students of Alliance Française in Asia, and especially in China, where I met Mr. Gaël. And I met a lot of Chinese students, and they were so eager to learn French, not only for the language, but for all the culture behind the French language. And I think, okay, the language is the reflection of a culture. So that means it's very interesting to learn. And you go through the people with the language, and you can communicate, you can exchange. So that's, and the reason is also because I can speak English and we can understand each other. So I can share something in English, which is not my mother tongue, right? So that's basically English, but in France, it's not so, common and not so easy to learn foreign languages. Okay, that's part. I try to be as accurate and concise as possible, but for me, I started with photography actually, because at the time I didn't think I was good enough at writing, so I bought a camera and I was very curious about South America. I started, in fact, traveling in South America, and I must tell the listeners that at the time it was the early 80s. And the early 80s, you couldn't travel so easily as now. I mean, as now before the Chinese virus, I would say, before the borders were closed. But then you could travel, but not so easily. And then I remember that I was interested in the indigenous people of the rainforest in Amazonia, and I was 22, and I had the chance to go there in the forest, and I spent months in the rainforest, with the people. We would say Indians, but it's Indians from South America. I mean, it's not from India, of course. It's just to be clear. And that was my first experience, and for me that was a shock actually. When you are so young and you discover a culture like that, which is so different from yours. And of course, my Spanish was good enough to understand through interpreters or other people. And in fact, actually, I went back to France and I started to learn anthropology. After languages, my major was anthropology. And anthropology is very close to journalism, actually, because you study you study societies, so in any group of people gathered is, for me, a society. You don't need to be like very far away, exoticism far away. I mean, exoticism is down the road, is down your building. I mean, that's why I'm interested in everything. Even in Paris, I go to a cafe and I listen to the people. For me, it's already, you listen, you hear to the people. And then when I came back, actually, I wrote a short article for a newspaper on a very special experience on education for the Indians in the forest. It was through the radio. And that was very revolutionary at the time. I mean, the radio would broadcast, in fact, education in the forest, and there would be classes every morning, and I was in the class to listen to the course, and that it was bilingual. It was the Indian language and the Spanish language, so that was very interesting. And that I wrote my first article in 1983 to this newspaper, La Croix. It was La Croix. It was very interesting. And then that was my beginning, and I started to be a trainee. I was a trainee in the summertime and was a student and a trainee, and I started a little bit to work in the newspaper at that time. And as it was difficult, I was interested in the international relation actually, and it was not so easy to be hired in a newspaper. Then I decided, as Mr. Gael said, I had to expatriate, to go to Hong Kong. At the time, it was far away. There was not many Western journalists in Hong Kong. It was quite expensive. And then I had the feeling that something was going on in this part of the world. And I had the chance to discover the China opening, actually. And I could get the visa from Hong Kong and I could travel. Oh, really, really, nearly all over China, not during those 4 years, but since 1987, I kept on following, covering, traveling to China, which is impossible now. But so you have the background, you have the knowledge of the field, and I think that's, for me, that's the main important thing for journalism is you can have the knowledge of the books, which are necessary. I think you have to read but then you have to travel and to go in the fields. So both sides are in enriching each other, so you need all of those dimensions. So for me, that was very, very important. And when Mr. Guy said I wrote books, I mean, I wrote several books, but I would let the people from China talk. I mean, I wrote a book about the first psychoanalyst in China, and I let him speak. I mean, I gave him, the speech, he had to express. It was not me thinking about China. It was giving his voice, to tell what is China for him, what was so important for him, So when after 4 years in Hong Kong, I went back to France and I was hired in the newspaper. I covered South America and Southeast Asia, and then later all of Asia, from Myanmar to Japan and Australia. And I was lucky enough to travel a lot. I mean, it was not so easy. I mean, because it's expensive to go to Asia, from Europe. But okay, we would travel cheap. But then I had the chance to meet and interview and write a report on this big region. And even though Mr. Gael said I was not in India, but India would be another big piece for me in the future, maybe. But it's a huge continent and very exciting. But then you need a lot of patience and you need a lot of time. And so, okay, to make it short, I think that for me now, I'm still very much excited, even after 40 years. I keep on being interested. I keep on being excited about what's new, what's going on, in the world. And I'm still very excited to take a plane and to discover other places. So that would be my sum up story about my work. So now I'm open to any question from you, Janvi, as a journalist.
Dorian, thank you for sharing your story. But I'm really curious to know that 40 years in journalism. So tell us, how has journalism as a field changed from then to now?
Oh, I think, I mean, the communications have changed a lot. I must stress that in the 80s, even 90s, you didn't have a mobile phone. You didn't have pretty much computers. So when you were on assignment for hot news somewhere, like in Haiti for a coup, or in Peru for demonstrations and everything, the people today, they cannot imagine that we had to call the newspaper, and there was a person on the other side listening to your article and taking notes, writing, and then typing it, and then to be printed. So it was really craftsmanship. It was really basic. You couldn't connect with your country or your newspaper very easily. Even working in a foreign country, I mean, you had to have your notebook, and you need to communicate. So you needed the phone booth everywhere. Your main thing was to find a phone somewhere. That's just an example. You didn't write. You had. I started with a typewriter. Mechanical typewriter also. So that would be the context at the time. But then I am very excited today with all the new technology, actually, because it's really, really, really very efficient, very quick, very powerful. I mean, you are in the middle of a demonstration and you can send the pictures, like in Hong Kong in 2019. So the big changes are there. But at the same time, we have to be careful about what is so easy. You can have pictures of anything, of anywhere. You need credibility. You cannot believe everything at first sight. You have to check and overcheck. And I think that's very good. But at the same time, the reverse is that, okay, anything can be published, anything can be broadcast, but then okay, you have a lot of underground movements and they make use of it,
There's a lot of misinformation also, because today anyone who has a phone considers themselves a journalist, and before we even write in our newspaper or on digital media, the news is already out on social media platforms. So that's, I think, another challenge that is
Yes.
very evident today in the media field. Yeah.
Yes, I think, but I think, there is one thing. I think the basic news, the big thing is that, okay, the big news, the main news, everybody know, okay? Something happened somewhere. Okay, so you have that on the social media, you have that on the radio, and so what? Do you consider yourself informed with that? It's not enough. Okay, something happened, and so what? So still, you have to explain. Why is it important? Why now? Who did this? Where? You have to explain to make it into perspective. So I think what is dangerous today is that the people might think they have information because they listen to radio or they read on the social media and they say, oh yes, I saw that happen this in America, in India, in China, whatever. So can you explain to me what happened, why, where, who?
I think that's what we can do as journalists, to explain or go beyond the breaking news.
Yeah, otherwise, you have the breaking news, and then what?
Yeah, true. And Dorian, as you have covered Hong Kong, China, so tell us, what about the absence of dissent, and not just in these part of the country, but overall in the media industry across the world? There is absence of dissent, and there is this suppression on the freedom of press. So how do you, as a journalist, deal with it?
In Hong Kong at the time, that was the only place. The place where you can work freely. It was very open. It was free. It was under the British. There was not really democracy in Hong Kong, right? But then it was the rule of law. You were protected. You could express yourself. You had newspapers, radio, and everything, which has been destroyed by China now for 1 or 2 years now, which is terrible, which is for me heartbreaking, because it's really how a country can destroy another country so quickly. For me, it's really heartbreaking. But then at the time, what is very challenging is that with the distance, I think at the time China was opening, right? So you could travel a lot in China. Of course, the idea was not to say that you were a journalist. You were not supposed to be a journalist, or I would go there without mentioning I was a journalist, because it was maybe not so easy to travel freely or to go and meet people everywhere. So that was, I would say, that was part of the game. China was opening. You had spaces to go and to discover and to meet the people. Not any people. You had to be very careful with some people criticizing the society, with some people in different areas, like the religious area or, a political area. People were very shy to talk in the 80s and 90s, right? So you had to be very smart, and you had to meet the people at night. And remember, you didn't have the phone at the time, so it was written paper. You could that was kind of, like the spies.
That was 80s and 90s. What about now, when we actually are facing the problem?
Well, now Janvi, now I'm in Paris, and you cannot, anyway, nobody can go to China, right? No tourist, but no journalist, no foreign journalist from abroad can come in. It's closed. I have friends who work in China, they go to China, but then they have 6 weeks quarantine. They are really checked, followed. They have their phones. They have a camera in the flat, not in the flat, in the corridor. So it's very difficult. For the journalists in China, it has never been so difficult to work. those, with an accreditation, based in Beijing or Shanghai, they are registered, they are official journalists. Okay, they have the right to work. But then the situation and the context is so stressful, is so paranoid from the authorities in China that they cannot do and they cannot go anywhere. I mean, the FCCC, the Foreign Correspondent Club of China, publish every year, their white book on the situation for them. And it has never been so difficult to be a journalist in China. And that's since Xi Jinping arrived in power in 2012, this is becoming very, very difficult. China is, with the COVID, with the virus, China is closed, has never been closed compared with the 60s during Mao and the Cultural Revolution. So it's very hard. And I should say that all the official media in China are under the Communist Party, and nobody can express itself freely. It's only propaganda. I'm afraid, I have to say that because even in the 90s or early 2000s, you had space in China. You had scholars, teachers, you could talk to them. They could be a little bit critical. They could be, very clear about the situation in China. But today, nobody dares to talk to anyone. And there is a very much a consensus among the Communist Party members and all the Chinese that you are not allowed to talk to foreigners. In last summer, you remember there were a lot of floods in the Henan province, the central province of China. And then at the time, many foreign journalists from Beijing flew to Henan and they published, and they could make it because the authorities were just not ready to they were not expecting, or they were not expecting foreign press to arrive, and it was a disaster because the flood were very, very, very murderous. They killed a lot of people. It was dramatic. And then a few months later now, there is a new regulation in Henan to decide that all foreign journalists now entering Henan province will be followed, registered, and they would be kicked out because they don't want the foreigners to come to the country. So that means it's becoming what is
tougher.
What is difficult is that the more you close, the more you from abroad you have phantasm, because when you don't know, you tend to imagine. But imagination is not journalism, right? You see, that's why usually I say I don't have any imagination. My work is not to imagine. I'm not a novelist, I have to go and see and watch, and then, okay, I can share. But now in China, you cannot go, see, watch, and speak to the people. Imagining that even what I've done in China for so many years, I couldn't do that today. It would be totally impossible. So it's just, it's not even frustrating. It's damaging. It's damaging anyway the image of China anyway. Not just Chinese, there is a big difference. There is the government, the party, and the people. And the people, I think, are the victims, definitely.
Dorian, I really noted down, imagination is not journalism, and journalists are not novelists. That's a very important line that, people in the profession or not in the profession should understand about the media industry. And Dorian, 40 years in journalism, can you share one of the most challenging assignments that you have ever been to? Or you can discuss any of your stories that was really challenging.
That's a difficult question because as I said, everything from what is exciting for me, but the most challenging, if you mean the most difficult. Logistically, at the beginning, it was difficult, right? when in China in the 80s, there was not much planes, there were trains, but it was not easy. You didn't have communication, it was not so easy. Okay, for this logistical thing, that would be challenging, right? But then in the province, I mean, like in many countries, people were very warm. I mean, they were really eager when they saw a foreigner, and they were really warm with you and everything. But then what would be the most challenging? I mean, a lot. In South America, it was challenging, actually. This tension, the violence was very huge. Peru, in Haiti, it was quite challenging. A lot of violence when you had a coup d'etat and, people fighting in the streets. So you have to be careful. In another dimension, in China, sometimes in the 90s, you had to be very. I mean, I was covered the religious dimension in China, so I would cover the Catholics, and there was an underground church in China at the time. So to reach them, it was very challenging because it was very dangerous for them to connect with me. I mean, you have a responsibility as a foreign journalist that you protect your sources, right? But because the danger for me was to be arrested and to be kicked out of the country, which is fair enough, but you were alive. But for those, if I connect with very courageous people, they would go to jail. So that would be more challenging for me. I mean, not to put them into trouble because I wanted to talk to them. So that was always challenging a bit in China. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you, Dorian, also think that your journalism is about activism in the sense like you want to, wouldn't say prove a point, but there is certain opinion or there is certain ideology that also reflects consciously or subconsciously when we write something?
Well, it depends. I think it depends on the media you work for. I mean, you have my newspaper. We are among the 3 most important newspaper in France. It's a Catholic newspaper, but like the others. But we are very eager to cover the human dimension of things. So that means that everything concerning human rights, we are very much involved in that. That means, we do journalism, but journalism, maybe I might shock you, but there is no objectivity. Forget about objectivity. Basically, doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Janvi, if you want objectivity, you just ask a computer to write for you. That would be objectivity, based on certain criteria that a human put in the computer. But still, as a human being, you cannot be objective, right? Because some very brutal and authoritarian regimes, like the Chinese one and like the Russian ones, they say, the foreign journalists are not objective. They're always criticizing China. There is also negative. So they say, we accept you to come, but you have to be objective. But for them, objectivity is not what we mean by objectivity.
Yeah.
They say objectivity is talk about the good side of the story. But the good side of the story for them is not the same good side of the story for us. So I think first thing first, objectivity doesn't exist. So if you want to, there are some cases, you have some topics, you cannot be, you can be balanced. I would rather use the term balanced, but that doesn't mean that, you write one side and then you write the other side. Does it mean it's balanced? And then what does it mean? That doesn't
exist. Yeah.
That doesn't make it a good article. When someone like the Nobel Peace Prize Chinese has been arrested and in jail, what can you make good side, bad side? No, it's only bad side. I mean, the guy is fighting for freedom. He's been arrested. What can you say about the Chinese regime that could balance? So, and we have some strong and deep convictions in our newspaper to defend, I mean, what we call, we can call that basic human rights, but we can defend rule of law. We can defend humanity. We can defend respect of the humankind. So that's the main idea. I mean, editorial thinking of the newspaper. You know, we wouldn't make a front page on a dictator saying, you know, good thing on a dictator. Okay, that would, if that's the question you ask, you know, you cannot, you just, if you are in a country, if you are in a democratic country, you have the chance to criticize, you have the chance, I mean, to think, to propose, to suggest different things. I mean, you have the duty of telling your readers that that's a bad regime. I mean, Russia is not a good one. China is not a good one. You even though sometimes, okay, you can say maybe there is some decision that are not bad, okay, but basically that was the problem with China for 30 years. You always had the communist regime, but at the same time, in the 90s and 2000, they have done a lot of things for the people.
But Dorian, when you're talking about regime, tell me as a journalist, what are your opinions on India's ruling party and our prime minister?
Oh, Janvi, that's a trick. That's a trick. But for me, okay, I am a very honest journalist. So I already told you, I've been to India twice, and I went to Dharamsala, you know, and to meet the Dalai Lama. So you see, that's another dimension. That's a very good example. You have also very good journalists interviewing people.
Yeah.
Now, I think it's a big problem. A lot of non-specialists, non-reliable person interviewed because maybe they are famous for other things, and they are asked on many topics. They are not credible. I mean, they have nothing to say about that. I mean, they don't know nothing about what's happening there or over there. And because he's famous, and that's another problem with the social media, you have people, okay, they are singers, dancers, actors, or whatever, you know, politicians, and they don't know nothing about Asia, they don't know nothing about anything, and they give their opinion. So that's why, Janvi, I'm sorry, I cannot answer your question about India. But, you know, the basics I know about India is supposed to be the biggest democracy in the world, right? Okay. But I cannot say much, you know, about the system. What I can say, there is no perfect system.
Okay.
And you have a prime minister, I know he's very nationalist, and that's all I can say. Really, even though I know it's difficult. I know there is a fight with India and China. This I know. I know. I can talk about it. This is, okay, I know. And with good reason, I mean. So otherwise, on India, I'm really not the guy who knows.
Yeah. But Dorian, as you said that you can speak on the, you know, conflict and the relation between China and India, would you want to share your opinions on the same?
I'm watching that on the side of China. I think that China, I would say there is a big strategy. I mean, the Chinese strategy overall, right? And it's not specifically about India, but India is part of a biggest China strategy. I mean, to light a lot of conflicts everywhere. You have a lot of potential conflicts in the North China Sea with Japan, Senkaku. You have a big conflict with Taiwan. You have a potential military conflict. You have another military conflict in South China Sea. Now with Russia, it's better. It's finished for no more conflict. Okay, and then now you have a potential and the middle conflict with India in those contested area sovereignty, which is also always the same topic, sovereignty. The Chinese, they say it's China, and of course the country in front say, well, no, it's not China, it's mine. So that would be the thing. But I don't know how far this strategy is not productive. Actually, I'm not sure China is going to win on this strategy. When you look at the other strategy, it's counterproductive. It's counterproductive. From what I know, I think the Indians are better prepared if anything happened on this moving border. I think the Indians are much better prepared to react to the Chinese military on the other side. It's just like, I'm not a specialist, but for India, all this border area has been touchy for so long, and they have a lot of...
The conflicts have been going on for decades.
Yeah, and they have military all around in other areas. So I think the military are much more prepared than the Chinese. That's what I would say. But okay, that's all I can say about that. But it's a big giant. I mean, in fact, you have the fight between the two giants in Asia with India and China. So it's part of the conflict. And now India is in the Indo-Pacific strategy. And now, okay, it's part of a surrounding all of China, So that's what China is afraid about. And I think China is afraid of India, actually. Okay.
And Dorian, there are so many people who are not from journalism industry, who are not from media, but they would want to learn something about how journalists work. So people know about the positive sides of being in our profession, but can you tell us about, say, a few limitations or a few challenges of being in the media industry?
Yes, I see what you mean. I mean, maybe you mean maybe that a lot of people think anybody can be a journalist, right, today. That would be the idea, right? It's like, now with Instagram and the iPhone cameras and everything, everybody thinks they can be a photographer, right? So it's totally wrong. I mean, it's a job. I mean, it's a job, right? It's a work. It's a job. You have to learn. As I said before in my introduction, I mean, it's not only about studies, but it's about a way of thinking and a personal involvement. And you cannot. You have some rules in journalism. You have an ethically. You cannot just write anything without proving it, without defending it, without testimonies, without documents and everything. So I don't think I can tell the people who pretend to be a journalist or who think they are journalists. I cannot tell them a lot, but what I can tell is the people who are reading those people. We have to, to take care of those people reading on social media, on anything, on your screens and everything. The most difficult challenge for us in the future now, and even now, is to for the people to be educated to the press reading or the media, people have to be educated with the media, saying anything cannot be a media, anything cannot be journalism, anything cannot be, you see what I mean? So I would say for the social platforms, for the newspaper, you have to identify yourself. Vibes of India is Vibes of India. So you identify yourself, you are serious, you have journalists in your team, and you are doing journalism. That means you have news, you have checked, you have double checked, you give perspective, you give angles, you write profiles, you cover something. so to explain everything. So I think that would be for the people to be educated now in social media and in media, and for those pretending, or for some, they don't even realize they are not journalists. They just believe they are because they can write. They see a picture and yeah, okay, that's it. And so, what can I do for them? I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
True.
Maybe if they don't have any followers, okay, it's done. But the problem is, some of them have a lot of followers. That's a big problem, I think. And so, okay, we have to check. I mean, the people have to be educated on media, I think.
And Dorian, do you believe that real journalism is when you write something which people don't want you to write? Everything else is just PR or public relations. Do you believe so?
The people don't want to read what you write?
Yeah, people don't want you to write.
Okay. So that means when you cover or when you write on very sensitive topics, for instance.
Yeah, when your story might not make everyone happy, but you still have to write it for
Yes.
maybe.
Okay. Yeah. But I know. We any professional in the media have done papers and articles that don't please a lot of people. Of course, if you go somewhere and you write a feature and it's very negative, whether for a big company or for the authorities, local authorities, or for anybody else, of course they don't like it. But it's another dimension of our job, not the only one, but it also to denounce, I mean, some injustice, some manipulation. It's part of our job. It's just part of our job. It's not the only one, but it's part of it. Definitely.
Janvi, with your permission, we have some questions.
Oh, okay.
Dorian, where if someone wants to become a journalist, some young aspiring student, which country is the best for learning journalism? For studying journalism in the world?
Which country
is the best to study journalism?
Even though we are speaking English, even though I would say there is the Anglo-Saxon journalism culture, right? And considered as one of the best journalism, right? Anglo-Saxon or American, right? Or English, okay? I think it's not because I'm French, but it's because you can go to London and you can go to the States, okay? But then I think we have in France one of the best journalism schools for a long time, for decades. In France, we have special journalist school. We have 3, 4 only journalism, and then the past years we have journalism department in university. We have journalism department in Sciences Po, science political science. So now it's expanding, but we have 4 very good journalism school. We have a special way of teaching journalism. I would say it's the French way. It's not the Anglo-Saxon way, and I think it's interesting when I meet a lot of colleagues from England or the States. It's a different way of thinking,
If I can add one more question to this, what do you think journalists of which country? I mean, it has become a very glamorous job with the expansion of communication channels. They have become kind of celebrities. They are high-paying people, and they have become very powerful and influencers. And the digital media platforms have come like Janvi's and many others. So what do you think, which country has got, in which country journalists are having the maximum influence in terms of having influence, power, money, of course, salaries? Which is the best country?
That's a very difficult question, actually. I think, even though I don't have a very direct answer to that, I think there are many countries, let's say small countries, we don't even know about, where you have journalists and media who have a strong power, where it's free, it's not like authoritarian, but you have also, I know some people in Sri Lanka, I know you have famous journalists, they are huge impact. Maybe in India, you have maybe some famous figures, right? Even though I know it generalistic, so you have an impact. So it's very interesting. So the journalists must be very serious, in India. If they have a lot of...
Does it have to do more with the democracies? Because democracies have free voices, they can express themselves. So
yes,
democracies have, much better journalism profession.
Of course, basically my answer would be, in democracies, you have influence. You have, of course, influence of the press, of the media, of the radio, and everything. Yes. But then you have also the other way around. I mean, you have democracies and you have the press, and you denounce things, and nothing's changed. Sometimes you are very frustrated,
Janvi, please.
Yeah, to just add to it, Dorian, I would say that the question of how much journalists earn, or which is the best place to earn for journalists, I think the question is coming from Gujarat. Gujarat is a very capitalist state, and that's why this question.
Okay.
But as a journalist, my experience has been that if you want to earn a lot of money, you better not come in the media industry, because media industry is not about money. It's about bringing your truth, bringing stories of people who do not have the power to present their stories.
Okay.
And I think it's a lot more responsible job than the other professions.
Yes, but I think the reputation also, I mean, no, socially speaking, I mean, in many countries, I mean, if you are a journalist, okay, it might be considered famous, but you are not making money at all. And the illusion of some big stars on TV is an illusion, because even in my country, you have 2, 3, 4 people on TV. They are famous and they have a lot of money. I mean, they have money because it's TV, but then it's a minority.
There is no journalism.
It's presentation, it's everything. I mean, some are more, I mean, better than others, but I think, yes. And also, journalism is, I mean, the reputation, I mean, socially, you don't make a lot of money as a journalist, globally speaking. You're even in it's middle, and in the new generation coming, the salaries are lower than before.
So what kind of young generation, like young students, should think of becoming a journalist? What kind of skills they should have?
Very good question. Very good question. I think, okay, I started by saying you have your own personality, but then now you have to learn technology. You have to learn technology. I mean, what I mean by that is that, okay, you have to learn how to write. Write, whatever. You have to write. Then you have to learn about camera, video, sound, radio at the same time. But what's now fascinating, even me as an old hand journalist, I can use my phone and I can make it whatever I want. I can, shoot picture and I can use them. I can film and I can, make a small movie and a short movie and information where I'm on assignment. So you have to learn the sound. I mean, if you are radio, I mean, you can interview people and everything. I think now the young ones coming have to be more complete. I mean, they have to learn everything. A long time ago in school, in journalism school, you would choose, after the first year, the second year, you choose, you want to go writing, you want to go radio, you want to go TV, for the second year. Now
you don't.
okay, you see, you have to learn everything. You have to manipulate everything to be complete, I think for basically for students in India, whatever, already you have English, right? But I would really push them to learn other languages. I mean,
Janvi,
they
Janvi, if I
own.
have to ask one question, and to you, Dorian, as well. Those who are, we have Campus France, we have a director, Ms. Gail, who is promoting education, particularly
Yes.
journalism. So,
Yes,
what
yes.
young student can think of? See, there are three things. One is a print, broadcast, and digital media. There are the three media. Besides media, beyond media, where they can find the careers, because we have people aspiring journalists, those who want to study journalism. So where can they find other careers, like maybe law firms, maybe corporate firms, maybe some other kind of agencies, where because communication has become very important in today's world.
Yeah.
What are the other places where they can find good opportunities by reading, by studying journalism?
Yeah. I think fact checking sites are the new thing, like be it newspapers or independent startups. I mean, they are into fact checking because there is a lot of misinformation. Like recently, Government of India had to announce that whatever you get on WhatsApp is not news. So I think in fact checking or in bringing the right information to the people, there is a lot of scope. And second thing I think very useful for young students is a nose for news. That's what we call it in journalism language. That you have to have that sense on what is news and what is not news, and that student can learn only when you go out in the field, meet four people or meet just communities in general. You can't sit in your classroom, you can't sit in an AC cabin and talk about journalism or learn journalism. I think that for young people, it's very important to go out. In journalism language, we call it the leather show reporting, where you have to just go out and get the news.
Oh.
Thank you. Very nice answer. Yes. Mr. Dorian, where
And
can they
Dorian,
find
I
if
also
you,
want to add, Dorian, to this, that when you talked about training in journalism or when it comes to studying journalism, many a times what happens in India, I'll just share my experience, that when we hire people from institutes in our state or in our nation, we have to make them unlearn the things that they have studied in their classrooms. That's the biggest challenge.
Oh, really?
Do you, have you faced similar things? Because whatever they are taught about idealism or nationalism or media in a classroom is so much not practical. The real media, or when they come into a newsroom, the things are so different.
Ah,
so
yes. There was
yes, yes.
no.
Yes,
I
Dorian.
saw a question, but
One question, yeah.
Yeah, there is a question like how journalism differed. I asked the same question, like how journalism differs from developed to developing countries. Like suppose you are in France and someone is in, as you gave the examples of other countries. How journalists and work ethics differ from one place to other?
Generally, I think I would say there are less and less differences, actually, I think. I mean, what is very striking now, I mean, if you ask me about 40 years ago, 30 years ago, I would have said, oh, you have a big difference on the technology, on the means, I mean, 40 years ago, nobody had a camera. Not everybody had a camera. Today, everybody has a camera. Everybody has a phone. Everybody has something. So that means for the media, I mean, in the developing countries, I mean, the journalists, they are well equipped. I mean, in that sense, it's not underdeveloped, I think, now I can communicate with people in the Solomon Islands, in the Pacific, in Fiji, in Palau, in India, anywhere. So, but then on the other way around, they can communicate with me. So that means I think there are less differences on that technical thing. Now it depends on the means, financial means those countries have. I mean, if you have a media power, if you have media group, they have money, they have very good journalists. I think really I've been traveling, you have very good media group and very good journalists in so-called developing countries, they now the young or whatever, they have been to university, they have been studying. For some of them, even in developing countries, they have been traveling. You see, the big difference now is that for some low middle class people, they could have traveled easier now, than before. So that means maybe there are less and less differences. Even in some poor country, I don't know much about Africa. Okay, maybe it's another area I don't know much about the media. But you have also, I mean, the journalists themselves, they are good. They are good. And now it depends on the political environment, on the financial environment, and the media. I mean, if you have people who have the consciousness that the country needs a free press and a free radio and everything, and they put businessmen, they put money in it, so it can help. But okay, maybe it's not everywhere. I think in South America you have very, very good journalists everywhere. West Indies, maybe, well, same. It depends on the countries, actually, really.
So,
Doran, just to add to your points, I can say that in developing countries, one of the major thing is intellectual property rights. I mean, there is little respect for intellectual property rights in developing countries, and I can safely say that for India, so many a times you can write an article, it can be easily published somewhere else without your byline in it.
Okay.
That's one issue. That's one issue that we definitely face. People can just there is a lot of plagiarism. Yeah.
Okay.
Then,
I didn't imagine that. I mean, that would be more difficult here. Yeah.
I just want to have one question, like to both of you. Rather, even Mr. Gal can answer.
Yeah.
Any aspiring journalist, what like from your point of view, what he or she can think that is the most satisfying thing about the profession? Yeah, it's an influencing power. It's your connectivity, interpersonal skill, connections. What is the most satisfying for a journalist, career journalist rather?
Janvi, go first.
I
have my idea. You go.
Yeah, for me, the whole process, I think more than the destination or the article, the whole process of meeting people, learning about their stories on a day-to-day basis, and then writing them and just hoping that it will make a difference to someone. Like on a micro level, you are making a difference when you are writing about, say, a rape case which happened in a nearby village, or when you are writing about sanitation problem in your area, or when you are writing about the roads not being constructed properly in another city. I think you are making a difference in your own small way, and I think that is the biggest satisfaction and also the power of journalism.
Wow.
As for me,
Dorian, you have to respond from the point of view, like you must be having better roads. I have not visited France, but you must be having better roads. So what kind of stories inspire you? Do you write about the slums, about the poor people, about the roads? Then you become satisfied, or what are the things satisfy you there?
I mean, I think as journalists, you have to be very you cannot be pretentious. You cannot think that by writing an article you are going to to save the world. You see what I mean, Janvi? I say, okay, I'm a journalist. I'm going to denounce injustice, and okay, that will bring peace on the world, and everything will be good and everything. No. It's like a teacher. It's cool. You have a teacher. He has 30 pupils. And I have been a teacher also a long time ago. I know that if I got the interest of 2 children, for me, it's a victory. You see, you teach something. Not everybody is going to be interested in that. Okay, so as a journalist, you write an article. Not all the readers are interested in your topic, right? It's about whatever. I mean, sanitation or justice or vote or whatever. But then, at least the people who read your articles, maybe they discovered something they didn't know. I think for me, it's very important to know that you are part of culture. I mean, you share some culture, some cultural knowledge, some bring food for thought, and you can think if you have enough food for thought. So I think journalists, and articles you bring, you can think and debate and change your mind and say, oh, I discovered this, and wow, I changed a bit my mind because, oh, I didn't know. The more you know, the stronger your convictions can be, if you are not so too biased. I mean, and that's why you have a lot of biased journalism today. It's this. You read that and already, okay, you cannot talk. I mean, I wouldn't say about Trump, and it was a big difference now. I mean,
So, what is the ratio of students opting for journalism nowadays? Mr. Gael, do you have any questions?
Yes, Dorian, thank you very much. It was extremely interesting. Today we are followed also by a lot of students in India who plan to go to France or to study journalism. And also, so my question was about what would be the perfect journey, the perfect starting for them, what skills they should learn, what makes French journalism specific, because you said it's different than Anglo-Saxon one.
Yeah.
And after they do their studies of journalism, for example, which internship you would recommend them to start the best way a career of journalist?
Well, first of all, I think if they want first, that Mr. Gael, if they want to come to study in France, I mean, obviously, I mean, if they manage, I mean, they should manage the French language, which is, I think, the basics. I mean, even though you have some schools who have some courses in English, it's not yet all in English. It's not like Sciences Po, you have high-level courses in English. But if they want to come to France, okay, first, they have to learn English, right, Mr. Gael? I think they go to Alliance Française, they learn the language. That's basic. Then they can have, I think that they have some scholarship from France to study in specific universities and different schools. You have scholarship for students in France. If they learn 2 years, I think after that they, because if they learn, that's very good because they are already at least bilingual or trilingual as Indian people. So they speak different languages. So they could start as trainees. But now it's interesting because you can work from any part of the world, right? So I would say if they are connected to an Indian newspaper in any state of India, I would say, okay, Gujarat, you have students. Maybe some newspapers in Gujarat might need an Indian journalist in France or in Europe. Now you can connect and you can have serious work from them, whether writing or video or whatever. It depends on the Indian media if they are interested in having news on Europe or France. I think it's very important to check if people are interested in. That's why now I would say France is important. But then imagine like in Brussels, in Brussels you speak French also. So that would be interesting as a French speaker if they have studied French to be based in Brussels. You have a lot of opportunities to work as a young journalist from Brussels. And the EU has also scholarship, sponsorship for foreign journalists also. And I'm sure Campus France can help them, right, Mr. Gael? I'm not a specialist of Campus France, but the different ways of be helped, so they can.
Yes.
But
Absolutely.
basically to learn, right?
Yes, thank you. Yes, absolutely. And your advice to them is very useful and precious. Thank you
And
very
Brussels, don't
much.
forget Brussels.
Because
really,
yes, because
really.
it's the center of Europe, and also
It's
you can
multilingual. It's multilingual.
Covering the European Union for India's
and especially
newspaper.
now with the EU Indo-Pacific is very important. So especially with China.
And Dorian, just another part of my question was, most of the journalists, of course, in India has been trained the Anglo-Saxon way. So what would be the skill that a journalist trained in France would make him different and would bring something different in the picture, because he would be quite unique, in fact. And it's also maybe a way for him to have a very good career because he has something different than the usual.
He has something different, Mr. Gael. The Anglo-Saxon way is very, very Anglo-Saxon centered. So that means the way they see the world is different from the French way. We are not English and we are not American. We don't see the world the same way. We see, as far as I can say something, I think we have another vision in France, or more largely from Europe. Our vision is that we are neither American nor from the other side of the world. We are in between Asia and America, but we are Europe. And in France, we have our own way of watching the world. We are an alternative, I would say. The big plus for them is that it's not binary. It's not black and white. It's not good and bad. It's just like we are in a middle way. The plus for our students from India is middle way. And I think it's quite logical with India. India as a country tries to be like also a middle way, in a way. You see, you'd remember, the conference, the non-aligned countries in the past, India didn't want to be part of the big powers. You want to be your own power. So that means it's close to Europe or France. We don't want to be under the influence of one big power or another. So I think that would be convincing to study in France. Yes, we are middle way. We are a middle way.
I have one more question for all of you. One is, what about, even Janvi may agree with this, what about independent journalists writing for different organizations, international organizations? Probably someone studies in France, they can become international journalists. They will be writing for Washington Post, they will be writing for London-based papers, French, China, maybe some other countries. Besides that, they can become better authors because they have got the wide knowledge by traveling, by writing. So this is another creative thing they can think of by becoming a journalist. They can. What are the rather opportunities and requirements, Janvi, to become independent international journalist you may be aspiring to be one day? You are muted, Janvi. You are mute.
Yeah, I think one of the prerequisites is to read as much as you can. In Indian media or in our offices, it is told to us that don't give your opinions unless and until you have at least 6 or 7 years of experience in the media industry. So this is what young people mostly make a mistake, that they start with giving opinions about a political party, or they start giving opinions about a public figure without actually reading about it. The younger generation has a very less attention span, and so it is easy for them to read news in shorts instead of getting into the detail of the things. So it's very important for young people to at least read about the things before commenting on it on Twitter or as a journalist. Yeah, I think once you are well read, you can write for Washington Post or you can write for Times of India. I mean, I think it's very important to know your subject.
Yes.
I think you need time. As I said before, you have a diploma. That doesn't mean you are done. That's done. Yeah, I mean, even me, I wouldn't dare to talk about some topics because I don't feel I am legitimate. So maybe the youngsters today, as they have access to all information very early, very young, they think they know everything. And I'm not saying that because I'm older than them. It's just like it's based on proofs, you know. They say, oh, we know. And we have some trainees, you know, some young trainees in my newspaper or during the year, you know, they come and they stay 1 month, 2 months, and they train, they work, they write. They are good. But you know, everybody started one day. You start, you know, you are beginners. I was a beginner, and even now I cannot pretend to write on some subject. Okay, I'm legitimate, but it takes time to be really, really deep, to have deep knowledge on something, because the world has never been so complex today. You know, it's not like the Cold War before. You had the you know, one side, two sides. Okay, it's done. No. And journalism is not about comment. You know, comment comes later. Okay.
So, what would you advise for any aspiring, for any journalist to who aspire to be international journalist? Is it age? Is it talent? Is it more reading? Or is it opportunities available? So, how they can write for the international journals, international organizations? Because there are many people, those who aspire to write, to go beyond their boundaries.
I agree with Janvi. I mean, they have to read and they have to write and write and write. I mean, you learn writing. And the more you learn, the more your writing is strong, deep, accurate, focus. You know, you can write, you know. You use a lot of adverbs, so it takes space, you know. And so, okay, you delay everything. It's a no. You have to write. You have to be a real writer. If you read, okay, for me, one of the reference for me, the Financial Times. You have some apparently, space, short article. You have some short article. But then everything is in it. Everything. That's the talent. The talent to put everything in a short space.
Sure.
That's an exercise. And sometimes they say, oh, you can write a feature, you have space. Okay, you are happy. But then sometimes in the morning say, oh, you don't have a lot of space. You must write this story in a very short space. This is much more challenging. This is very challenging. So that's a good exercise, right?
So we need to have good language skills as well.
And synthesis, how to make
analyzing power. Yeah.
Yes, to make it short, you know.
My questions are over, Janvi and Mr. Gal. If you have any questions and if you want to speak anything, you can please do it.
Just want to say a big thanks to Dorian, big thanks to Janvi, and of course to you, Mashankar. I think it was very interesting for the students to have already an idea about a senior journalist in France, his career, his opinion, the way he sees the job, the studies of it, and also at the same time to have a point of view. And it's interesting, I think, for Dorian, it's with you, Dorian, because it's an exchange with Indian journalists. So you have also those already you see those opinions, some common point, but differences and everything.
Very
rich.
You see, we are learning every day.
Yes.
That's the job. Incredible. We can exchange. It's incredible. It's great.
And we love it.
Dorian, I had a great time. I got to learn a lot from you. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you for your kindness. Thank you, Umash Shankar.
Thank you
It
so
was
much.
great.
It was a pleasure hosting you, Dorian, Janvi, and of course, Mr. Gael, who has been a partner of this session. Hope to see you soon in some other session. By the time, please
That will
take
be
good care of yourself.
that
Things
will be
are
next
again.
week, right?
Yes, it will be next week for
Yes.
us, Umashankar. Next week,
Yeah.
same time, 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. Yes, Saturday,
On a
11th
different topic, of
of
course.
December.
Yeah.
On a different
See
topic,
you.
absolutely.
See you. I hope we see each other next week, right?
Yes,
Yes,
we see each other next week, and the topic of I think this time would be gender equality. So
That will be a
it's gonna
subject
be,
for you,
it
Janvi.
will be a subject.
I can learn a
on,
lot from you in India. I don't know India. I can talk about China, Japan, you know.
And we want to have an overview of Asian situation.
Yes.
Your opinion on it. You are mostly, of course, as I said in the beginning, focused on Eastern Asia, Southeast Asia, and also Australia. But we will have an exchange also about this subject with some Indian specialists of this question. So it will be
great.
very interesting. What's the
So,
situation about gender equality in Asia?
Till next week, stay safe. Take good care.
Yeah, you
Good night.
too. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so
Janvi.
much.